The dialogue.
So you mentioned, you spoke about protocols, and you mentioned there should be domestic protocols, household protocols, state protocols. How do we ensure these protocols are actually implemented in some or the other manner? Because why I'm emphasizing on that is our lives is not our lives anymore. In terms of, I am not responsible just for myself, but my family, my colleagues, and my society as well. Right? One small negligence on my part, and I could get maybe 100 people infected. So moving on from now onwards, all of us, all 1.3 billion people of India are responsible to each other in greater ways than before. So how do we ensure that there is a need to have these protocols implemented? But now that the cultural evolution is happening, how do we get there? Yeah.
See, I am a strong believer that the only way in which you can get a human being to do anything is that he must want to do it. So this power of persuasion must be used by the government to persuade people that it is in their own interest that they follow these protocols. That's the only thing that can work. That is the only thing that has ever worked in the world and in the history of mankind. That people must know that they do something because they want to do. Right? So how do you push people into a state where they would want to do it? This is where I think the government must constantly use the media. And there is a huge responsibility because I think the print and the electronic media in this country is just phenomenal. I mean, it is full of people who have very, very good imagination. They can come up with excellent clips. They can come up with very short, messages. I am a great believer in the power of the word. And by word, I would mean any method by which I communicate an idea. So the power of communicating an idea is going to be very important. Recently, I saw a clip where all the top actors have come together and have advocated the necessity for us to be very careful in these times. That is highly commendable. But there are 1,000 such clips, 1,000 such messages that must constantly keep hitting the common man. And it must be in terms of the language that they understand, that it must be from people whom they believe. I would say that even religious leaders, make them come up with major messages. There is a tendency for people to believe in religion, the tendency of people to believe in their religious leaders. Use them as a medium to communicate this message and get it down to the last layer possible. So I think communication is going to play a huge role in getting the idea across that this is all to their benefit and to their good. And secondly, that if they are careless, it is very unfortunate because they will be harming the life of another person. Because some people have this attitude that it is my life and therefore I can do whatever I want with my life. And even if I'm a little careless about things, it really is it's an issue with me. It is not. I mean, if you're going to be careless, if you're going to be reckless, then you're harming the life of another. I don't think anybody would want to put in that position. So I think this message must travel to them in as many different forms, in as many different modes of communications, to as many people, influencers, and people who can get that message across. And the government, not only the government, it is also the private sector that must actively work towards, transmitting this message to the public.
So, when the lockdown was announced and we saw that initial days, there were certain challenges for the business centers of various retail, e-retail suppliers to provide essential items to households. And there was a lot of interstate restrictions, intrastate restrictions between various level of authorities for the manufacturers to supply those goods. So how do you think that can be sort of curbed and going forward in terms of a period lockdown and the future for the next 2 to 3 weeks? How do we make sure that we smoothen that supply chain as we move into the lockdown?
This is what I said earlier, that today the emphasis is a lot on medical care, right? We are consulting doctors, which is very good. We are consulting paramedical staff, again, extremely good. We are consulting professors, scientists in medicine, and scientists who are doing good work in medicine. All that is commendable. But from now on, till the 14th, the government must also start dialogue with captains of industry, people who are responsible for providing various types of services, with the bureaucrats. There must be wide-ranging discussions between them. The government must understand the problems of each of these sectors and then come out with a protocol. It must not be a top-down approach, but must be a bottoms-up. Because then you start from the common man. You listen to even union leaders. You start listening to union leaders. You start listening to representatives of workmen of various organizations, and from that to evolve a protocol. Please don't sit in the secretariat, drop a protocol and try to make it applicable to all sections of society. That just won't work. You will have more breaches of that protocol than compliance. So it's better for you to actually sit with the respective classes and draw up a protocol. The chances of compliance of that would be far higher than what you would hope if you were just to draw up a protocol and try to make it applicable.
So also one big criticism which came about was the way the whole issue of migrant workers was handled. And, we're still seeing them crossing states and cities and walking hundreds of kilometers. And that's actually a big human tragedy which we are sort of seeing in front of our eyes. And a lot of them are actually working in various cities and they're all employed. They have their livelihoods and they also form part of the essential services ecosystem. Now, what can be done to bring them back, to help them get back to their jobs, to create that situation where you sort of loop them in and also ensure that you don't restrict those services while bringing the migrant workers back, because if they don't find livelihoods now, they will be in trouble in the next 2 to 3 weeks. As you mentioned before, that it's not about you can survive for a day or two, but surviving without job for a month or two, for them, it's a big issue. So how do we meet those challenges?
There are a couple of problems which are going to be quite daunting as far as the government is concerned. We have very little statistics of agricultural laborers and construction workers. Now, these are the two large unorganized sectors of the population. You can have Jan scheme and various schemes. There might be some, and then there are people in the Manrega scheme. So there might be some information from the data that is available there. But the problem happens to be that how do you address this sector and try to win their confidence? So it's very important that happens, because once again, if those people go without work for long periods of time, that can have an impact not only on their livelihoods but also on their lives. So you need to work on confidence building measures and try and see whether you can make them sustain for long periods of time to wherever they have gone, or how do you activate jobs, at least in some measured business, for a short period of time and try to ease the restrictions. This once again calls for a wide-ranging discussion with people who represent them. There are very good representatives of this class of people, and you must listen to them and try and see what solutions can be worked.
Right. So you also spoke about essential items, and you spoke about maybe there is a need to revisit the definition of essential items. So what do you think can be classified as essential? Do you think there is a need to evolve the definition of essential items in terms of goods and services which people might require but are now realizing that, they thought they might not require, but now are realizing that they do. So what do you think can be done in terms of a graded approach as we move forward?
See, currently we are not in a position to apply in full force the definition of life as recognized by the Supreme Court. The definition of life in Article 21 of the Constitution has been steadily widened by the Supreme Court, and it says life is not mere existence. But we can't sort of adopt that expansive definition now, and for at least a couple of months from now, then we are going to be denied access to a lot of things that make life interesting and meaningful. For example, I think there is going to be a lockdown of places of worship. There is going to be lockdown of entertainment malls. There is going to be lockdown of restaurants. There is going to be, of course, lockdown of schools and colleges. So any place which has the potential of a mass gathering, it is going to face lockdowns. And that we will have to live with for a period. But where it is possible for us to avail of certain facilities or goods or services without doing damage to this concept that we shall not congregate, that we shall not collect in large number in places, and that we shall reduce the possibility of infection to the maximum, I think in such cases we must allow for some sort of a easing of the norms so that life becomes bearable for those who are going to be confined for long periods of time.
Right. And so also we're looking at the behavior patterns of people, and I think a lot of them are now getting used to this way of life, but they are also facing a lot of mental issues, and people are also sort of reacting to the lockdown in different ways and mechanisms. So what can be done in terms of outreach, and what can be done in terms of, let's say, you have these essential goods being sort of delivered to them, and you have the e-commerce players working closely, but can we make it more localized? Can the approach be more localized in terms of having everything within my vicinity rather than having to order from a distance? That ways you can have a more micro approach towards delivery of essential services, while at the same time ensuring that you have everything you need in your vicinity, so that keeps you calm also. So do you think that could be something which can be looked at?
I agree that there has to be a localized approach to these issues, because see, one thing basically we must understand about the average Indian. An average Indian is not a very law-abiding Indian, right? From the time that we, violate traffic signals, that's part of. See, I would put it this way. Historically, the government has been seen as a ruler and not as a service provider. For the average man, the government is seen as a ruler and is not seen as a service provider. And the government also most times rules with a secondary emphasis on providing service. So on account of this, there is a large tendency of people to keep violating the law because they don't see themselves on the same plane as the government. Therefore, this is the first large obstacle that you have to go. I think in fact, if you remember the first speech the Prime Minister made, he was talking about the drill, right? So the drill is to make us all come together on the same plane, right? Which currently we are not. So the drill that he was talking about is to get us to come together on the same plane, which we must for our own survival. And many of the things that we have been asked to do collectively is an exercise in reaching that, that culture, at least for a short period of time. And hopefully it shall be a short period of time, that we come together as a nation and work on the same plane, whether you are part of the bureaucracy, whether you are part of the police, whether you are a citizen, whether you are a rich man, whether you are a poor man, all of us come together on the same plane and must obey instructions from authorities. Now, this natural tendency of an Indian to cock a snook, as they call it, at any rule, law, or regulation must be suspended at least for a period of 2 to 3 months in the collective good of all of us. So you are right that the localized level, people's imagination, especially the creative minds, must be expended towards sending very effective messages to all of us. I would say common man or uncommon man. I think to all of us that there is a regime and there is a regimental need to conform to these rules and regulations.
Right. And so finally, sir, I also want to sort of understand if you're looking at let's say, 3 to 4 week period of partial created lockdown. That's what we're looking at right now. In terms of smoothing the deliveries and ensuring everything is working fine, how can an online complaint system, as I think you sort of mentioned before, can deliver? Let's say if I am sitting in my house and if I'm not getting access to services, is there a way I can reach out to authorities? Is there somebody who's accountable to ensure that my essential services are delivered to me? Could there be a helpline? Could there be a state plus private sector collaboration on this? What do you think of
No, I mentioned this, I think in the opening statements of what I said, that there must be a very, very vibrant and effective online complaint cell, which must be set up by every service provider, if it is in the private sector, and every government sector, if it is in the government sector, to ensure that these services are properly, made available. So that's going to be very important in the coming days, and that must be very effective. It must not be there just for the sake of complying with some norm. That people who are running it must put their heart and soul to it, and that's how it needs to be done. And I think we must do that. That's very important, and it must be integrated into the system to see that goods and services delivery happens effectively and in a satisfactory manner.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rajah. Thank you so much for your time. That was a really insightful, interesting discussion. I'm sure it'll add a lot of value to the viewers and the stakeholders and also the policymakers who will be watching it. So thank you for taking out the time today and talking to us. And please be safe, stay safe, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you everybody for watching as well, and please subscribe to our channel. And we'll come back with more videos in the coming days. So thank you so much.